On a cold and rainy evening, the city looked different. The sky was dark, and the streets were shining with reflections of passing cars. People rushed in all directions, holding umbrellas, protecting themselves from the heavy rain. Everyone wanted to reach home as quickly as possible. No one wanted to remain outside in such weather. But in the middle of this busy scene, one person did not have the comfort others had. A young woman pushed a simple stroller with one hand while trying to hold a small, worn-out umbrella with the other. Her clothes were soaked, her hair was wet, and her shoes made small splashing sounds with every step. The baby inside the stroller let out soft cries, disturbed by the cold wind and the noisy city. The woman bent down again and again, whispering softly to calm the child. Even though she herself looked exhausted, people walked past her quickly. Some looked at her for a moment with sympathy. Others did not even notice her struggle. Everyone was in a hurry. She did not expect help from anyone, because life had already shown her many times that help rarely arrived when she needed it most. But still, she kept moving forward, trying to reach the bus stop before the rain became worse. A few meters away, a luxury black car slowed down at a red light. Inside the car sat a man in a clean suit, holding his phone in one hand while reading a message on the screen. He was the CEO of a growing tech company, someone used to making big decisions, signing contracts, and managing thousands of employees. His life was full of long meetings, strict schedules, careful planning, and responsibilities that most people never had to imagine. He looked up for a moment, simply to rest his eyes from the bright screen. And that was when he noticed her. The woman struggling in the rain with the baby. The way she held the umbrella so the baby stayed dry, even though she herself had no protection. The way she kept soothing the baby with gentle words. The way she kept walking, even though she clearly looked tired. Something about the scene touched him in a way he did not expect. Maybe it was the contrast between his comfortable seat and her difficult situation. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, filled with tiredness yet full of determination. Or maybe it was simply the innocence of the baby. Crying in a cold world where comfort seemed rare, the CEO leaned forward without thinking and watched her more carefully. The driver noticed and asked if everything was all right, but the CEO didn't answer immediately. He was deep in thought. He wondered where she was going in such heavy rain. He wondered why she was alone. He wondered if she had anyone to help her. As the car began to move again, the image of the woman stayed in his mind. He did not know why, but it felt like a picture he wasn't supposed to forget. He put down his phone, something he rarely did, and kept looking through the window until she disappeared from view. The woman finally reached the bus stop. She let out a small sigh of relief, but her body still trembled from the rain. She sat on the metal bench, which was cold to the touch. The baby cried louder now, clearly hungry and uncomfortable. She pulled her bag closer and checked quickly, making sure no one around her was watching too closely. People sat around the bus stop, busy with their phones or staring at the road. No one paid attention to her. She carefully lifted the baby into her arms, sheltering the little one under the small umbrella. She whispered to the child, trying her best to calm the crying. Her hands were shaking from the cold, but her voice stayed gentle. She always made sure her baby felt safe. No matter how difficult the moment was, a bus passed by but did not stop. She felt frustrated for a moment, but tried not to show it. The baby started crying louder again, and she rocked the child slowly, humming a soft tune she used when nothing else worked. She was used to moments like this. Moments when she had to be strong, even when she felt weak. A few minutes later, a car pulled up near the bus stop. At first, she didn't look. She thought it was just another person waiting to pick someone up. But then she noticed a figure walking toward her with an umbrella. She held her baby tighter, not knowing what to expect. When she looked up, she saw the same man she had passed earlier without realizing it, the CEO. Of course, she did not know who he was. To her, he was just a stranger in expensive clothes, someone who did not belong in her world. He stopped near her, holding the umbrella above both her and the baby. Rain poured around them, but for a moment, a small circle of dryness formed around her. She stared at him, unsure why he was standing there. "Are you all right?" he asked in a calm, respectful voice. She opened her mouth but hesitated. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to explain her life to anyone. She didn't want people to think she could not manage. But something about his tone was different. It did not feel like pity. It felt like genuine concern. "I'm fine," she said softly. Even though she was clearly tired, he noticed her shaking hands. He noticed the soaking wet clothes. He noticed the baby trying to bury its face into her shoulder to escape the cold, without saying much. He adjusted the umbrella so it covered her better. People around the bus stop stared, surprised by the unusual sight, a powerful-looking man helping a soaked mother and a crying baby. The woman didn't know how to react. No one had offered her help in a long time. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers. "Do you need anything?" he asked again. She shook her head but looked away, uncomfortable. Not because of him, but because she wasn't used to anyone paying attention to her struggle. He didn't push further. Instead, he simply stood there, holding the umbrella, protecting her and the baby from the rain without expecting anything in return. The rain kept falling. But in that moment, the world felt a little less cold. She didn't know who he was. He didn't know her story. Yet something very simple, something very human connected them at that moment. A small act of kindness on a rainy evening, and unknown to both of them. This moment was about to change both of their lives in a way neither had imagined. The rain continued to pour heavily, but the man kept holding the umbrella over the woman and her baby without showing any sign of impatience. He didn't care that his expensive suit was getting wet on one side or that people were staring at him. His focus stayed on her and the tiny child in her arms. The woman didn't understand why someone who looked so well off would bother to stop for her. People usually avoided getting involved. Yet here he was, standing quietly beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. She tried to calm her baby, rocking the little one slowly. The crying softened, but didn't stop completely. The man watched silently, not wanting to interfere. He could see she was doing everything she could, and he respected that. After a moment, he spoke again, but very gently. "Is the baby hungry?" he asked, careful not to make her uncomfortable. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Her cheeks warmed with embarrassment. She didn't want strangers to know her personal struggles, but the truth was hard to hide. She had been out since early morning, running errands, finishing work she needed to turn in, and trying to get back home before the rain got worse. She hadn't expected the storm to grow so quickly, and now the baby was restless and wet. The man noticed her hesitation. He didn't want to make her feel judged or small. "If you need a little privacy, there's space inside my car," he said softly. "It's warm, and I can step out if that helps." "What?" She looked up sharply. She had heard offers before, but not like this. There was no pressure in his voice, no hint of judgment, no hidden meaning. Just a genuine offer to help her take care of her child. Still, she did not immediately agree. I don't know," she said quietly. He understood. Trust was not something people gave easily, especially someone in her position. "You can leave the door open if that makes you feel safer," he added, still calm. "Or you can sit inside and I'll stand outside. You don't have to accept anything. I just don't want the baby to stay in the cold for too long." His words made her pause. She looked down at her child, whose small hands clutched her coat tightly. The baby needed warmth. The baby needed food. And despite her fear and hesitation, she saw something honest in the man's eyes. He wasn't pushing her. He wasn't rushing her. He was simply offering a little kindness. After a long moment, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. He stepped back a little to give her space. She adjusted her grip on the baby and stood up slowly. The rain immediately hit her harder now that she wasn't under the shelter of the bus stop. The man followed beside her, still holding the umbrella so her child remained protected. His car was parked only a few steps away. When they reached it, he opened the back door for her. Warm air from the heater flowed out, making her feel immediate relief. She sat down carefully, her baby still held close against her chest. She did not close the door completely, and he didn't try to close it for her. He simply nodded in understanding and stepped aside. "I'll stand right here," he said. "Take your time." She lowered her gaze and focused on her baby, who began to quiet down now that they were sheltered and warm. The sound of the rain hitting the roof of the car was loud, but somehow calming. She took a moment to breathe deeply. Her whole body relaxed for the first time that day. As she fed her child, she finally allowed her thoughts to settle. Who was this man? Why did he help her? What did he want in return? But when she glanced outside at him, she found him standing quietly with his back turned toward the car, shielding them from the rain with the umbrella. There was no sign of irritation or boredom. He wasn't checking his phone, wasn't pacing impatiently, wasn't forcing conversation. He simply waited. Something about that made her chest feel tight and knot, in a painful way. But in a way that reminded her how long it had been since someone treated her with simple kindness. She finished feeding the baby after a few minutes. The child was calmer now, with tiny eyes blinking peacefully. She adjusted the baby's blanket and gently burped the little one. Slowly, she stepped out of the car again, careful not to slip on the wet ground. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above the sound of the rain. He turned toward her, offering a small, warm smile. "I'm glad the baby is okay." She hugged her child close, unsure what to say next. She didn't want to bother him any longer. "The bus should come soon," she added quietly. The man glanced at the road. "Where are you heading?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Back home." "It's a long ride." He looked at her soaked clothes and the thin blanket wrapped around the baby. He knew the cold could get worse. He knew she had already been out in the rain too long. "If you'd like," he began carefully, "I can give you a ride. It's no trouble. I'm going in the same direction." She looked at him suspiciously. "Why?" she asked honestly. It wasn't rude. It was simply the truth. She needed to understand. He nodded slowly, accepting her question. "Because you look like you've had a very long day," he said, "and your baby shouldn't stay out in this weather any longer." There was no fancy explanation, no story to convince her, just simple words. She bit her bottom lip, thinking. She didn't trust people easily, and she had every right to be careful. But she also saw how gently he spoke, how respectfully he behaved, how he made sure she didn't feel pressured. "I'm not asking for anything," he added, "just offering help." After a long silence, she nodded once more. "Okay." He opened the car door again, this time waiting for her to step inside on her own. She adjusted the stroller and got in with the baby. He closed the door slowly, making sure not to startle the child, and walked around to the other side and sat in the front passenger seat. The driver looked at him in surprise but didn't say anything. "Where to?" the man asked gently. She told him the area. It wasn't close. In fact, it was far from the center of the city, the kind of place people usually didn't visit unless they lived there. The man nodded. "We'll take you there." As the car pulled into the road, she held her baby tightly, watching the city lights pass through the rain-covered windows. She didn't speak, and he didn't force conversation. But the silence wasn't uncomfortable. The warmth inside the car helped her breathe more easily. The baby finally fell asleep, tiny chest rising and falling with soft breaths. The man occasionally glanced back, not to judge her, but to make sure she and the child were comfortable. He noticed how her shoulders slowly relaxed, how her eyes closed for brief moments, tired from the long day, how she tried her best to stay alert despite her exhaustion. The city looked different from inside the car. Streetlights flickered through the rain. People hurried across sidewalks. Buses splashed through puddles. The world outside was still chaotic, but inside the car it was calm. After a few minutes, he spoke again, gently, like he didn't want to interrupt her thoughts. "Do you always travel this far?" She nodded. "I have to. It's the only place I can afford." He didn't react with shock or pity. He simply listened. "And you're alone?" he asked quietly. She nodded again. "Most days, yes." He didn't ask more. He didn't dig into her personal life. He respected her silence. The drive continued through winding streets, quieter areas, and darker corners of the city. The rain had softened a little, but the roads were still wet. The driver slowed down to avoid sudden puddles. Halfway through the ride, the woman let out a small sigh, not of frustration this time, but of relief. For once, someone was helping her without expecting anything in return. It felt strange. It felt unfamiliar, but it also felt warm. The man looked back again. "If you ever need help again," he said gently, "you can let me know. I'm not far." She didn't know how to respond. She simply nodded and looked down at her sleeping baby. The car kept moving, taking her closer to home, but also toward a future she didn't realize was about to change. The woman's neighborhood was quiet, with narrow streets and small buildings that leaned slightly toward each other, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other, and life moved slowly compared to the busy city center. She knew every pothole, every corner, every small shop that stayed open late for emergencies. She also knew how lonely the nights could feel, especially when the rain made the streets slippery and gray dot. As the car turned into her street, she held her baby tighter. The child's tiny head rested on her shoulder, warm and soft. She was grateful for the comfort inside the car, a stark difference from the cold rain she had faced earlier. The man glanced at her quietly, noticing the relief in her posture and the careful way she carried the child. "I'll wait until you're inside," he said gently. Stopping the car a little ahead of her building, he didn't offer to carry anything or rush her. He simply stayed patient, giving her the choice to take her time. She opened the door and stepped out slowly, her shoes making soft splashes on the wet ground. She took a deep breath, inhaling the faint smell of wet earth mixed with city smoke. The baby stirred, but didn't wake, still comforted by the warmth of her arms. "Thank you." She whispered again, her voice low but sincere. It wasn't just for the ride. It was for everything: the umbrella, the patience, the simple human concern. He nodded. "I'm glad the baby is okay. That's the most important thing." She hesitated for a moment, looking at him, wondering how much she should say. She had spent her life being careful with strangers. She had learned that most people were busy with their own lives and rarely noticed the struggles of someone else. But there was something different about this man, something honest. "I don't know how to thank you," she said finally. "You didn't have to do any of this." He shook his head softly. "Sometimes we just need to notice someone's struggle. That's all. No thanks needed." She looked down at her baby and adjusted the blanket once more. The small movements of her hands showed how careful she was with the child. He noticed the tiny scars on her hands, the signs of hard work and long days. He saw how strong she was even when her body trembled from exhaustion. "Do you live alone?" he asked gently. She nodded, but her eyes flickered with a mixture of pride and sadness. "Yes, just the two of us." He didn't push further. There was a story behind every answer, and he didn't need to know all the details. He simply respected her space. "I should go now," he said quietly. "But if you ever need anything, let me know." She nodded, unsure if she would ever see him again. The thought of this man leaving made the quiet street feel a little emptier, even though the rain had stopped by now. She carefully climbed the small steps to her building, holding her baby close. He watched until she disappeared inside, then slowly got back into his car. The ride back was silent, filled with thoughts that wouldn't leave his mind. He thought about her struggle, the bravery of a single mother raising a child in such a difficult environment. He thought about how easy it was for people like him to forget the world outside their offices and luxury cars. But he also realized that noticing someone's struggle could make a difference, even in a small way. For the woman, the night felt different. She put her baby to bed, finally allowing herself to rest. Her muscles ached, her clothes were still damp, but her heart felt lighter. She thought about the stranger who had helped her, and a small smile appeared, despite the tiredness. It was a simple act, yet it carried weight she hadn't felt in years. Over the next few days, the woman found herself thinking about the encounter. It was unusual for her to trust strangers, unusual for anyone to care so quietly and genuinely. She shared the story with a close friend, careful not to exaggerate. The friend listened, wide-eyed, amazed at how a single act of kindness could change the feeling of an entire day. The man, meanwhile, couldn't forget her either. He thought about her baby, the tiredness in her eyes, and the resilience she carried despite every difficulty. He began to think more about the programs and opportunities his company could provide to people struggling like her. It wasn't about charity or publicity. It was about noticing what was happening outside his office walls and taking small steps to make life a little better for someone, The next weekend, he decided to discreetly follow up. Not to invade her life, but to ensure she was okay. He asked his assistant to help him identify areas where single mothers often struggled. He wanted to offer support that would not embarrass anyone or make them feel uncomfortable. It was careful planning, quiet, and respectful. He wanted to make a difference without making her feel like a charity case. Meanwhile, the woman continued her daily life, facing small challenges with the same resilience she always had. She went to work, cared for her child, and managed the small household alone. But she also carried the memory of that rainy night. The man who had stopped, and the warmth of human concern she hadn't felt in a long time. It became a small, quiet source of hope, a reminder that even in a hard world, some people still noticed and cared. One afternoon, she received a message from someone she didn't know. It was short, polite, and offered an opportunity that could help her and her baby. She read it carefully, surprised, and showed it to her friend. They discussed it, hesitant but intrigued. Could this really be as good as it seemed? Was it safe? Was it too much to hope for? After considering it, she decided to respond. It was the first time in a long time she allowed herself to consider help without fear. The next few days were filled with cautious steps, meetings, and quiet preparation for a chance that could improve their lives. Meanwhile, the CEO worked behind the scenes, making sure everything was arranged respectfully and safely. He didn't want to draw attention to her situation. He didn't want to embarrass her. He only wanted to provide a steady hand, an opportunity for stability, and support she deserved. Little by little, their paths were about to cross again. The rainy night had started as a small, unexpected encounter, but its ripple effects were beginning to show. Both of them were learning something important about trust, kindness, and human connection. One small act on a rainy evening had started to change both of their lives in ways neither could have imagined. The world outside the window remained chaotic and wet, but for these two people, it was becoming a little brighter, a little warmer, and full of possibilities that had not existed before. The days following the rainy night were full of quiet reflection for both the woman and the man. For her, the memory of the stranger who had helped her lingered like a gentle warmth in her heart. She had always believed the world was too busy to notice people like her. But that evening had reminded her that small gestures of care could exist even in a city that seemed cold and indifferent. She continued her routine, waking early, preparing breakfast for her baby, checking emails for work, and managing the household. Life was still challenging, but now there was a small sense of hope she hadn't felt before. The memory of being treated with respect and kindness was something she carried with her, like a shield against the hardships she faced. Meanwhile, the CEO, back in his higher-re's office, kept thinking about her. He remembered her exhaustion, her determination, and the way she had cared for her child despite everything. It was a reminder of the invisible struggles many people faced every day. It made him realize that his influence and resources could be used to create real change. Even if it was just for one person at a time, he began researching ways his company could help. Not in a public way, not for recognition, but quietly and respectfully. He wanted to ensure that any help would protect her dignity and provide real, practical support. He asked his team to look into programs for single mothers, opportunities for childcare assistance, and job openings within the company that could be both flexible and supportive at the same time. The woman received a message, carefully written, offering assistance. It was respectful, professional, and clear. It didn't pressure her, and it allowed her to make her own choice. Reading it, she felt a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. Could someone really care about helping her without expecting anything in return? She discussed it with her closest friend, seeking advice and reassurance. Her friend encouraged her to consider it. It was rare for such opportunities to come her way. She knew deep down that this could make a real difference. After some thought, she responded to the message. She expressed gratitude and curiosity, wanting to know more about what was being offered. Within a few days, a meeting was arranged in a way that respected her schedule and her comfort. She was nervous, unsure what to expect, but also quietly hopeful. She dressed carefully, making sure the baby was settled before leaving. She took deep breaths, reminding herself that accepting help did not mean weakness. On the other side, the CEO prepared quietly for the meeting. He didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel like a charity case. His focus was on creating a safe environment where she could feel respected and valued. He wanted her to see that support was possible not as a gift, but as an opportunity for growth and stability. His team was ready to provide information about the program, its childcare support, and a flexible work opportunity that could fit her lifestyle. When the day arrived, she stepped into the office cautiously. The space was quiet, welcoming, and non-intimidating. She was greeted politely and shown to a comfortable seating area. She brought her baby along, who was calm and curious, looking around at the bright lights and gentle voices. The atmosphere was calm, professional, and respectful. Easing some of her initial tension, the CEO entered quietly, not drawing attention to himself, but offering a warm, sincere greeting. He explained the program in simple terms, focusing on the practical benefits, support systems, and the respect and privacy she would be given. There was no pressure, no expectations, only a genuine offer to help her and her child have a more secure and manageable life. She listened carefully, absorbing each detail. The offer was beyond anything she had imagined. It wasn't just about money or a job. It was about stability, support, and the chance to focus on her child without constantly worrying about survival. She asked questions, seeking clarity, and he answered patiently, making sure she understood everything. The conversation was calm, respectful, and empowering. As the meeting ended, she felt a sense of relief and cautious optimism. She could see that this was real and that it could change her life for the better. The CEO assured her that she could take her time to decide, that there was no rush, and that she was free to ask questions or decline at any point. She left the office that day feeling lighter, hopeful, and surprisingly strong. She had faced hard days before, but now there was a sense that life might be different, that someone had noticed her struggle and had chosen to respond with kindness and practical help in the days that followed. She started planning how to integrate the new opportunity into her life. She arranged her schedule, prepared her baby for changes in routine, and shared the news with her trusted friend. The support system began to grow quietly but steadily, giving her confidence she hadn't felt in years. The thought that someone had seen her effort, her struggle, and had taken action to make life easier was both humbling and empowering. For the CEO, the process of arranging this support was rewarding in unexpected ways. It reminded him of the power of observation, the importance of noticing struggles, and the impact even small gestures could have. He learned that leadership wasn't just about decisions in a boardroom, it was about empathy, action, and the willingness to step into someone else's world with respect and care. This stage of their journey was quiet, slow, and deliberate. There were no dramatic gestures or large crowds, just careful planning, thoughtful action, and genuine concern. It was a human story unfolding quietly, a story of trust, resilience, and compassion that began on a rainy night and now moved toward meaningful change. Both of them were learning and growing, preparing for the next chapter, which promised hope, stability, and a sense of possibility that had been missing from her life for so long. Months passed, and the woman's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The opportunity she had been offered provided her with a steady income and access to childcare, giving her a sense of stability that she had not experienced in years. The baby was healthy, happy, and growing fast, and she felt a new confidence blossoming inside her. She could focus on her child and her work without constantly worrying about survival or safety. The first days in her new routine were challenging. She had to adjust to a structured schedule, learn new responsibilities, and navigate her own doubts and fears. But she carried with her the lessons she had learned from the rainy night, the knowledge that there were people who cared, that it was okay to accept help without feeling ashamed. Each small victory, from finishing a project to managing her child's schedule, gave her confidence and hope. The CEO occasionally checked in not to supervise or control, but to ensure that the support system was functioning as intended. He made sure she felt respected and comfortable. Each interaction was quiet, respectful, and non-intrusive. He admired her resilience and her determination to create a better life for her child. He had not expected that a small act on a rainy night would lead to such a meaningful impact, and he felt quietly proud that he had been able to help. The woman began to notice changes in herself as well. She was calmer, more patient, and less anxious. She had time to think, to plan, and to dream. She began to consider possibilities for the future that she had never allowed herself to imagine before. The world felt a little less overwhelming. She felt stronger knowing she had someone in her corner, even quietly and respectfully. She also began to understand the power of small gestures. She thought back to the night when the CEO had offered her the umbrella, had watched her quietly, had spoken with genuine kindness. It seemed like a simple thing, but it had changed the course of her life. That single moment of observation, empathy, and action had started a chain of events that led to stability, opportunity, and hope. She realized that human connection, trust, and kindness could create profound change. The baby, growing and learning quickly, became the center of her world, as always. She watched the child's small milestones with joy, the first steps, the first words, the small achievements that made her heart swell. She shared these moments quietly with the CEO when he checked in, and he celebrated them with genuine warmth. Not as a superior acknowledging a subordinate, but as a human recognizing another human's triumphs. Over time, she also began to help others in small ways. Inspired by the kindness she had received, she looked for opportunities to support people in her community. She offered advice to other single mothers, shared tips on managing schedules, and provided emotional support when she could. Her life, once filled with struggle and isolation, became a quiet network of human connection and resilience. The CEO continued his work, learning from the experience. He realized that leadership was not just about business success, but about noticing the human stories around him. He learned that empathy, careful attention, and thoughtful action could create lasting change even outside the boardroom. The rainy night had taught him that even small acts of concern could ripple outward and transform lives. Their paths crossed occasionally, always in quiet, respectful ways. The woman was never made to feel indebted or embarrassed. She simply received guidance, support, and opportunity, and she grew stronger with each passing day. The bond that developed between them was subtle but powerful, based on mutual respect and understanding of life's challenges. The rainy night became a story she remembered often, especially during moments of struggle. It reminded her that help could come unexpectedly, that people could notice her without judgment, and that human kindness could be life-changing. She often shared this story with close friends as a lesson in hope and resilience, emphasizing that even small gestures mattered deeply. For the CEO, the experience remained a quiet lesson in humility and empathy. He understood that his position gave him the power to observe, act, and impact lives in meaningful ways. He realized that compassion and thoughtful action were as important as business acumen. He had learned to slow down, notice the unseen struggles, and step in quietly when it mattered most. Together, though their worlds remained different, they had created a ripple effect of positive change. The woman's life was more secure and hopeful, and the CEO had gained a deeper understanding of human connection, empathy, and the power of simple kindness. A chance encounter on a rainy night had led to months of growth, transformation, and quiet triumphs. The story concludes with a simple truth: sometimes noticing someone's struggle and responding with compassion can change lives in ways we cannot predict. One small act, like offering an umbrella to a struggling mother, can start a chain of events that lead to stability, opportunity, and hope. It reminds us that human connection, kindness, and understanding can have the greatest impact, shaping lives quietly but profoundly. And for both of them, the rainy night would always remain a turning point, a reminder of resilience, empathy, and the power of simple human care.